Business owners of Reddit, what's the most obnoxious reason an employee quit/had to be fired over? Pawnshop employee stole $400 from the cash register, then realized that there were video cameras. He had no idea where the security footage was stored, so in order to cover his tracks he set the store on fire. He actually ended up getting pretty badly burned in the process and went to jail right after the hospital. Funny thing is, if he'd just put the money back, no one would have even looked at the tapes. Even if he was fired for stealing is bad, but arson. And the proven fact that this guy doubles down on mistakes. Are we just gonna gloss over the fact that this guy, in an effort to not lose his job, decided to burn down his job? Right? And for $400? That's not nothing, but it's also not burn down the building kind of money. Had a guy who we hired who showed a lot of potential, sales. He was a little arrogant and had a good-sized ego, but wasn't enough of a problem. He was very good at sales and eventually it went to his head. He started showing up late all the time, leaving early, cutting corners where he could. The final straw came when he showed up late and someone spoke up about it to him. He decided the best choice of words he could yell were, "I make the most sales and I have the biggest dick, so you can all duck off." He was fired on the spot. Customers thought it was pretty funny though. I used to own a bakery and a woman quit because she blamed her yeast infection on a bad batch of yeast I bought from China. I may be a guy, but I don't think that's how it works. Depends on what she's using for a bread box. Oh, bread box. With Sandra Bullock? The company I work is a contractor for a giant corporation and we go to different stores to do work. This new guy we hired seemed normal at first, but it turned out he was a complete ducking idiot. So one day, he goes on site with one of the senior employees to shadow him. This genius thought that because we did work for the giant corporation we could just eat anything off the shelves and from the refrigerators free. Well, employee saw this and was like, "WTF are you doing? You need to pay." And manager comes. This guy then started fighting with the manager, then got in his car after and drove off. Needless to say, his ass was fired the next day. Hope it was Petco. Listen buddy, I installed that fluorescent light over the dog costumes aisle. I'll eat this gerbil if I want. Medical clinic. An employee told a patient he wants to know what she tastes like. Doesn't get much worse. Not many exit interviews start with, "We really hope that was just sexual harassment, but we're gonna inventory the samples just in case." Yeah, when sexual harassment is the least concerning explanation. I used to manage a store in the mall. One of my employees, I'm pretty sure, was cheating on her husband with a mall security guard. I would come by on my days off and he'd scurry out in a fluster. I never mentioned it, but the guy was coming by all the time to the point that it was keeping her from doing her job. Finally, we had a work meeting and I said in a very non-accusatory way, something like this: "I know it gets slow in here during the week, and I'm guilty of it myself, but from now on I need everyone to keep personal visits to a minimum or during your lunch break." She stands up and starts screaming at me. How dare I accuse her? I'm a bitch. She quits. She continued to call me and leave me harassing voicemail for a while too. Oh, to be the bored employee half listening because it doesn't apply to them. Best meeting ever for them. Tool and die shop owner here. One of our machinists would go out for lunch and slam back 3 to 4 beers every day. When I found out, I told him he can't drink beer at lunch. He said it was his time and what he did at lunch was his business, not mine. The next day he came back from lunch smelling like beer. I let him go on the spot. A few years later he showed up in my office asking for his old job back. He said that he was an alcoholic back then and was sorry for his behavior. He was now sober and needed a job. I hired him on the spot and it worked out great for 5 or 6 years. Then he started drinking again and I had to let him go a second time. I have no idea how he is doing now, but I often wonder. He was a great machinist and a nice guy when he was sober. He was a great machinist, must have been to liquid lunch on the regular and have still 10 fingers. Definitely, I'm not even sure how much 3 beers affected him, but that's not something I could ignore. If he hurt himself and had any alcohol in him, I would have been ducked. The second time he didn't drink at lunch, but was drunk at 7 a.m. from the night before. It was a shame because he had his shit together for a few years, then his demons caught up with him. Woman was using company FedEx to deliver purses for her Etsy shop. When you guys found out, you should have ordered a purse to the address of the hour department, then just watch her panic in confusion. I worked for a boutique hotel, small, cute, expensive AF, as an ops manager. Basically, unless the area manager had to come in, I was the law. I get a frantic call on my downtime from an employee claiming our overnight guy tried to assault him. I have a sigh, as the guy freaking out is notorious for being a drama queen. I load up the security camera on my home PC, go to the time frame, and holy shit. Our night guy legitimately lunged at his coworker and tried to strangle him. Luckily a desk was between them, and that gave the victim time to bolt. Instantly felt like a dick for doubting him. Well, this is when I call in the area manager. We show up at the ass crack of dawn and speak with the dude who made the attack, and he claims he didn't do it. We show him the video, and I shit you not, he responds with, "I don't recall the events of that evening." We fired him on the spot. What started the fight, you ask? Well, the victim had done extra work to make the attacker's shift easier. The attacker felt like this was an insult to his work ethic. Oh, and I got multiple reference requests from similar hotels asking for a good reference. I simply said I wasn't able to provide a positive reference, as legally that was all I could say. Employee, does a nice thing overnight guy, you deserve to die now. There can only be one overnight guy. My wife and I started a small software company 20 years ago. She's the manager and does sales an hour. I do the programming. Anyway, we hired a programmer one time, and the first day on the job I spent the whole morning with him going over our development philosophy, how we do source control, etc., and then showed him an overview of our applications and how we build them. Along the way he was highly critical, pointing out what he considered flaws in everything. After lunch he goes back in to see my wife. He obviously didn't know we were married, we don't share surname, and at work we keep pretty much to ourselves. He says to my wife, "You know how to fix this company? You need to fire that other guy." We still laugh about that one. One of our crews was on a job and the client turned up and started losing her shit over something they'd done wrong. 10 minutes later a guy turns up, and as he is wearing high vis they assume he is also working on the project. We had this one guy who was as dumb as a bag of rocks. He goes up to the newcomer and starts talking about this fat thing BTCH who needs a good slap and how dare she complain when she obviously doesn't know shit about construction. Turns out the newcomer was that bitch's husband. Oh shit, they broke rule number 1. If you don't know who they are, assume they can fire you until proven otherwise. Or don't be a ducking asshole to anyone. We hired someone to do video photo media work. After a certain point he felt it was selling out and didn't want to do media commercially. He wanted to do business stuff. We asked him which role he would like. If he picked his role, we'd try it out. If he didn't, he would quit. He decided to quit. He couldn't come up with a role. What kind of work is it? Something about the way you worded that has caught my interest. Outdoors tourism. That's selling out, to this guy? For duck's sakes, 9 companies out of 10 have a crazy boring position in the supply chain or do mundane work that needs to be done. I would kill for my same office job, but in something like outdoors tourism, it's literally the best of both worlds. This guy is going to have regrets. About a year ago, I hired a guy who was down on his luck. Went against my best judgment. Due to the nature of my business, I usually don't hire people that fit his profile, out of shape, poor hygiene, etc. It wasn't long before I started hearing complaints from female employees and clients. Turns out that he would often attempt to flirt with women, and when turns down, he would lose his mind and call them terrible names and insults. I don't tolerate that shit, so I gave him a very stern warning. The very next day, I found one of my sweetest female employees visibly upset. Upon inquiring, she said that the dipshit had followed her home yesterday to make sure she got home safely. Then showed up this morning to escort her to the office. She was genuinely scared. I called him into my office and told him to scram. He threatened to file a complaint with the Department of Labor for discrimination against men who have an innate need to protect women. Didn't matter. Told him to beat it. And now I'm fighting the stupid claim with a dole. This is the first time I'm hearing that men who have an innate need to protect women are a protected class. Bet it's the first time the Department of Labor is hearing it too. But he's special. S.